Hello everyone, my name is Mehek. I hope you guys are doing fine and safe, and like always I hope you guys are reading. We are back with another book, and no surprise, it's on Japanese culture. I think I have read enough books on Japanese culture, and after this book I'm just going to take a break reading about it. The book is called Tokyo, The Old Bells of Tokyo, and it's by Anna Sherman. Now, for those of you who have seen my Japanese my video, I mentioned a point at that time that Japan as a country, it keeps its culture and its country away from foreign invaders or influence, because of which it was able to maintain its unique culture which exists even till today. And that's exactly the culture that you would be reading in this book. Now, the general theme of this book is the time telling bells that existed in Tokyo at that point of time. Now, Japan as a country, is a country of bells. So back in the 18th century, Tokyo, which was called Edo or Edo, it was called Edo at that time, and it was ruled by these shoguns, who were military dictators appointed by the emperor at that time. And these are the people, who licensed time-telling bells at that time. So the bells basically told for hours and told people when they are supposed to eat, sleep, or go to work. In this book, Anna, the author Anna, she basically goes on exploring these time-telling bells, trying to find out the history behind them and the families that were involved, who were the bell ringers. So she goes on the discovery of finding these bells, and while she's doing that, she gives us a peek into Tokyo's history, the legends, the locals, and in general about the city and what really existed in the past and what it is currently. And while she's doing it, while she's exploring this city, she kind of makes friend with Daibo, who was very famous in Tokyo back then. He was famous for his coffee and the way he poured coffee. So his cafe kind of became a place of solace for the author, and she often visited it and met Daibo to make sense of all the discoveries that she has done. And she constantly says that she was a westerner in Tokyo, and because of which she always felt like an outsider. She made an attempt to understand the customs and the language, but she always failed miserably in that. So yeah, that is something that she's the book is very complex and it has a lot of critical information, but some of the things that I really found interesting is the author has constantly mentioned that how Tokyo is a very restless city. It's constantly shifting and changing. That's because people in Japan, their eyes are always fixated on the future. They do not like talking about their history or past. For them, history begins today, so they're always fixated on the future. And another interesting thing that I read in this book, there's actually also a separate book on love hotels in Tokyo. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but that was quite an interesting chapter, to read about the love hotels that exist in Tokyo. Now, the people there believe that entering a love hotel is basically when you take a break from your everyday life and break from the societal pressures and expectations, and all your fantasies come true at these love hotels. And you'll be amazed, reading about how these hotels are so organized and they're maintained. Although they are practically erased from all the guidebooks and from all the atlases, but they very much do exist, and the locals are aware about it. So that is something that you'll read about in this book, actually. Further, you'll read about, which actually kind of made my favorite chapter, because the book is all about bells that were used for depicting time. So time is a huge part of this book, and you will read about how Japanese people, people in Tokyo have evolved. Their time mechanism has evolved. Earlier they depended on nature, and then they depended on creatures, and they still do. And how then it all became mechanical. Now, each one of us know that Japanese, they use these 12 different animals or zodiac, which depict the year or the time. There's a very interesting story behind it. It is said that, which I read in the book, that when Buddha was planning to take nirvana and leave earth, he summoned all the animals, but at the end of the day only 12 animals showed up. And in order to thank them, he kind of broke the years into 12-year cycle, and made every animal, all the 12 animals who had come, he made each one of them guardian for that year. So you have animals like rat, mouse, dog, sheep, ox, snake, dragon, and etc. For example, this year is the year of ox, and people in Japan actually quite relate to these zodiac creatures and these animals. They kind of they believe that those creatures signify their personality traits as well, so they kind of relate to these creatures in general. So you'll read about that, and then you will read about how they stopped relying on the moon phases and nature and moved on to old clocks, which were not exactly mechanic in nature, but they were really interesting looking. Like till date there is a old clock island in northern Tokyo which houses these old clocks, which still has these creatures representing the hand, and nature and its elements majorly forms the aesthetics of those watch. So that island still exists where these old clocks are stored. Another interesting thing which actually exists today, and which I would really request you all to check online, is about the mention of this myriad clock. I'll tell you the exact word, actually I don't want to mess it up. It's called the myriad year clock. So it was built in 19th century, and it's one of the most complex timepiece in Japan, and they have it stored in their museum till date. And if you look at that watch, it has 6 phases. It shows you the 24 hours time, the 12 hours Edo time. It shows you seasons, and it has mentions about the different elements, the moon phases, and it also has a separate dial which shows you about the Chinese ancient time system. So it's a huge, I actually went onto Google and checked the watch. It's actually a huge piece, and they have it in the museum, and I think you guys should really check it out. It's quite interesting. So this whole chapter on the time and how it has evolved was quite interesting for me to read. Like even when the author was exploring, sadly when she was going on finding these time telling bells, she found out that most of these bells were burnt or damaged during the World War II, when America was bombing Japan, and they were damaged, and then they were melted for scrap and junk. So that was really sad to read, that part of history you're losing onto that. But besides the bell, how they have evolved with these old clocks and mechanical watches, and how they evolved from those traditional watches, it was quite interesting to read. So yeah, that was what this book is all about. It has a lot more other things that it is talking about, like the families of the bell ringers, and a few, like I said, a lot of critical information. But yeah, now coming on what I think about this book, like I said again, that it has a lot of critical and complex information. So this book was part interesting for me. The things that I discussed with you, those were really interesting to read, but partly it was a little boring for me to read, because the information is too critical and complex, and I just felt that the author could have made it more interesting with a simpler way of writing or text, or maybe she could have included more pictures. So at one point of time I actually got bored, and I was like, I can't do this. But yeah, because it was interesting in part, I kind of managed to finish it up. But I think you guys could just pass this book, because yeah, I don't really think that it's really that interesting that I would really recommend it to you guys. I mean, there are a lot of other books, but Japanese, how their time telling machines evolving from traditional mechanism and nature and all those things, that was really interesting to read. So that is something that maybe you could go and separately read it online. But other than that, I think you could give this book a pass. Yeah, that's all on this book. I'll see you guys next week with hopefully a more interesting book. Till then, take care. Bye bye.